Teaching adult learners. There are four things that we're going to discuss in this part of the adult learning process. People develop through interactions with their environments, first. Secondly, development follows a cycle of differentiation and integration. Number three, within individuals' development is a variable, not uniform process. And number four, the ability to reframe experiences serves as a marker for development. According to John Dewey, experience is created in interactions between external conditions, what goes on outside your own skin, and an individual's personal needs, desires, purposes, and capacities. Development, therefore, takes place in a social context of environmental prompts as people act on the world, and the world in turn acts on them. The norms of cultural practices, authorities, class, racial identity, for example, shape how and what people know and thus the course of their development. Development can also be thought of as an ongoing cycle of differentiation and integration. When, when adults encounter events that cannot be adequately understood through or assimilated into their existing frames of reference, the process of differentiation may begin. If so, they come to experience themselves, usually unconsciously, that things are made up of parts that do not form a coherent whole. No wonder that adults can sometimes find certain learning experiences challenging and even at times traumatic when they find themselves at odds or dissatisfied with what they have believed about the boundaries of their socialization or the values that have served them through their life. Ideally, though, this disintegration becomes an opportunity to create a new kind of integration. To excuse me, to successfully accommodate these experiences requires a larger and more complex frame of reference. When people operating from one set of beliefs encounter others who operate from another set of beliefs, the potential exists to change both sets of ideas, particularly in circumstances that provide for thoughtful reflection and analysis. People may slowly come to see, feel, and understand things differently. However, these changes do not necessarily happen in concert, and some aspects of the developmental process may be ahead of or behind as more complex worldviews and perpetual frameworks begin to emerge. Age may be a fairly good indicator of development in the lives of young people, but chronologically, maturity is not necessarily an indicator of adult development. Another way to conceptualize developmental changes is in terms of how adults perceive and reframe their life themes. Life themes refer to beliefs that guide an individual's choices and self understanding, such as responsibility, success, their own competence. These often originate in childhood and young adolescence, though some may emerge during adulthood. These themes help interpret and bring order to a myriad of perceptions, thoughts, actions, and feelings that constitute an individual's actions with their environment. When, however, someone can not only acknowledge but reframe these beliefs in terms of, for example, perceive them as how certain experiences and my reactions to them have led me to be or think or do differently, the adult has then moved on to a more complex self construction and the possibility to be some other way. Among the transformations that such learning can create is a qualitative shift in how adults understand both the task of learning and themselves as learners. In the least developed conception, learning is understood as increasing or acquiring knowledge, something that originates outside the self primarily by memorizing or reproducing. Reproductive learners, therefore, take a surface approach and think in terms of getting and storing knowledge. A second, this would be known as informative education. A second, somewhat more sophisticated concept is preparation to action learning, which focuses on a different type of knowledge acquisition, taking in procedures and facts so that they can be used in some practical way. The most complex perception or reconstructive learning centers on the learner's abstraction of meaning. This is a deeper approach to learning, an interpretive process. If learners come to the learning environment expecting to accrue knowledge as a discrete bits of information, and if nothing is done to change that perspective, reproductive learning or informative learning is all that will happen. The dynamic intersection between learning and development concerns the fundamental change in how meaning is made or how we know what we think we know. Marisro's definition of learning elaborates on this point. Learning is understood as the process of using a prior interpretation to construe a new or revised interpretation of meaning of one's experience in order to guide future action. The description of transformative learning describes a way of thinking that is increasingly inclusive, discriminating, and integrative of experiences, as well as open to alternative perspectives. That being open to alternative perspectives is really important. People come to these new understandings because their very form of knowing, that is, the rules by which they construct their own meaning, is in itself transformed. Not all learning has this developmental approach. Informative learning simply adds to the form as it is, whereas transformative learning puts the form itself at risk of change. The new form is also bigger than the earlier. It is a larger mind of what and beyond what has been learned in the past.